Hello everyone, this is Nick. How's everyone going out there? Hope too many of you aren't isolated, but if you are, I hope you're doing what I'm doing and living your best isolation life by indulging in one of your hobbies, like building a computer, which is what I'm doing in this video here. Yes, I've been on YouTube for about 4-ish years now, and I've never really had a purpose-built PC just for creating YouTube content. Thanks to the lockdowns going on in Victoria, I've got a bit more time on my hands. I'm earning a bit of money off of YouTube now. So what better time to do it? In front of me, I have all of the parts, sans the case that I'll be using. Also have a couple of bits and pieces that I'm pulling out of my old PC to put into this new one. But let's start with that. I have a V850 power supply by Cooler Master. It is frankly overkill for what I was using in my old PC, and only being a few years old, it's still well within its lifespan. So I'll be putting that into my new one. Still plenty of power to provide this new system. And I have an old graphics card as well, one of these GTX 960 2GB models from EVGA, which is all right. It's still good enough for like editing and publishing HD video content. However, we do have a situation very soon where NVIDIA is going to be revealing the next generation of graphics cards. In fact, that's going to be September 1st, probably about a week after this video comes out, something like that. So I'll sort of put off that decision making until that time, and I might upgrade from something like this, and go for something that actually help me edit and render 4K footage, that kind of stuff. I use Adobe Premiere, so most of the heavy lifting in that software is done in the CPU, not the GPU. However, just recently Adobe added the ability to sort of accelerate your video rendering and some of the plugins using the resources from NVIDIA cards. So it's not irrelevant. Plus, a bit of gaming would be nice anyway. Apart from that, I have everything in front of me. I'll put a list down in the description if you want to go through this in detail. But the most important bits, we have a Ryzen 3 950X, one of these Ryzen 9 third generations. This thing is an absolute friggin' beast when it comes to video editing. So stoked to have one of these. A Meg X570 Unify motherboard from MSI. What else do we have here? We've got 32GB of Kingston HyperX free RAM DDR4 to match that motherboard. We have a 500GB drive from Samsung for my system. I've got a 1TB drive from my old system, which I'll be putting into the new one for everything else. We've got this big air cooler from Noctua, the D15. I opted to go for air cooling, as I always have in the past. I am interested in the idea of doing a water-cooled system at some stage in my life, but frankly, the risk of catastrophic failure just isn't really on the cards for me. I'm not really interested in having a system that is damaged because of a failure with a pump or a miscut pipe or something like that. I'm not the most patient guy at the best of times, so I don't want to take that extra risk. Also the maintenance and all that kind of stuff. Now, I do realize that yes, there isn't really a huge inherent risk going water cooling over air. It's just when things do fail, it can be a little bit more catastrophic. And I'm not the kind of person that really wants to sort of maintain this thing every few years like you have to do with water cooling. Nothing against it. It's obviously better for thermals overall, and yes, this processor does recommend that you use water cooling. However, the D15 is so close to an all-in-one water cooler in terms of its thermal performance, I'm going to take that hit rather than go for all the downside of water cooling. That's just where I am as a builder. It's what I prefer to do. Apart from that, I'll go through the rest of the bits and pieces for this build as I'm doing it. Now, one thing before I start, I want to stress this point. I am not an authority when it comes to PC building. There are way better YouTubers that you should be listening to. Don't use this video as a be-all and end-all guide to how to build a PC. In fact, I'll have down in the description and on the screen in front of me a list of YouTubers that you should be following for that kind of stuff. But if you're mildly interested in it, if you're one of my regular viewers who likes to watch X-Wing stuff and you've sort of been thinking about it, well, use this as a kind of way of me showing, hey, it's not really that difficult. It's a lot of fun. Most people can do it. A lot of people are probably scared by the idea, and I just want to stress this point. It's not that hard. Look, use what I'm showing you here in this video as a sort of a jumping point in terms of a rough guide, in terms of what you can do, what kind of parts you can pick, all that kind of stuff, and go from there. But with anything that you pick for a PC, any component, always look at reviews, look at performance, look at benchmarks, thermal testing, all that kind of stuff. Do your research before you buy any components. I have bought these parts because they suit me for this build. So with all of that said, first up, we're going to assemble the main components and do a quick test to make sure that everything boots up. So motherboard, CPU, CPU cooler, RAM, and the graphics card. We're just going to put those bits together first, make sure it all works, and then we'll go ahead, get the case out, and put it up on the bench here and assemble all of it. Always make sure you do this first, because if you find any errors in this part of the build, it's so much more difficult to fix it later on when it's already in the case. Okay, first of all, let's have a look at the motherboard. Now, you should be doing all of this work with minimal risk of statically zapping anything. So I've got a static wrist charge here, for example, which is hooked onto my power supply. The power supply is obviously turned off so I don't electrocute myself, but that allows all the static charge in my body to get grounded out and won't risk shorting onto the motherboard or any other circuits. So let's do this first. Always important to work on a surface that's not going to cause any static electricity. This wooden table is no good, for example, so we're going to use the box that the motherboard comes in. So that is a gorgeous motherboard. I opted to go all black for this build, not messing around with any RGB stuffing like that. Oh, let's peel that off. Let's have a look at that. Oh, yes. Remove before. Oh, where is it? I want to do it. I want the satisfaction. There we go. Oh, there we go. Oh, I thought it was over the whole thing. Hang on, there's more. There's more. Haha. Da, da, da. There we go. Oh, yes. That's a good peel. You might say it's quite appealing. There we go. Oh, I've never used Ryzen before. I've always done Intel builds. In fact, when I was starting to work out the parts for this build, I defaulted to an Intel i9 because I know in the past that's had very good performance with Adobe Premiere. But as I started to do research, I realized, oh, AMD actually making some pretty dang good CPUs at this stage. In fact, they have taken Intel to school in terms of market share these days. They are currently on top, which just wasn't a thing each and every time I built a computer in the past. That is a thing of beauty. I love the etched glow on the front of these things. So basically, when you're installing a CPU, you literally just drop it into place and it should fall in on its own. That's it. That's all you have to do. Oh man, that is just got to be so careful. I almost don't want to be talking while I'm doing this because it's the most frustrating thing to stuff up. All right, let's put this arm back down and we're in. Put the RAM in because we're going to have a bit of overhang when it comes to that Noctua cooler. It's going to get in the way potentially with this RAM. Just scissors, Nick, scissors, come on. I know it's completely meaningless, but I love the look. It's silly. I mean, RAM is RAM at the end of the day. There's nothing really that exciting or special about it. So long as you get the size and speed you want, go for a reputable company, like Kingston in this case. Now, just so you can all see this, you see there on the motherboard, there's actually an indication of which slots you should install the RAM first. In other words, the second from the top and the very bottom slot. That allows you to get the best speeds possible out of it. I think it still works if you plug it into like the first and second, but you don't get the optimal speed. I don't know, it doesn't matter. Just do what it says, basically. As per the instructions, we're going to go into slot 2 and 4 if we're counting down from the top there. Also, this divider here is never perfectly centered, so it can only go in one way. That's the beauty about building computers. It's basically like putting those shaped blocks through the holes as a kid. What do you call those actually? I don't know. But my point is, it's very hard to build a computer the wrong way because basically snap down there and snap down the other side. There we go. Lovely. Computers are largely designed to only go together one way. These are meant to be idiot-proof. I mean, I'm building one, so that just goes to show you. There are a few things that do have similar plugs. A lot of the power supply plugs are the same, for example. And it's really not the end of the world if you get those ran the wrong way. Just certain voltages and currents are designed to work in a certain way. You don't have to put much pressure on, just enough so those little catches snap into place. And we have installed our RAM. Cool, righto, let's have a look at this cooler. I'm really excited to play around with this. I've wanted to play around with this Noctua stuff for quite a while now. Back when I built my last computer, which was about 5 years ago, Noctua were still one of the better rated fans, but there are two big problems with Noctua fans for me back then. First of all, they were very, very expensive. Still are, but I've you know, got a little bit more money than I do as I did 5 years ago. And second of all, they only came in this really garish, ugly cream and brown scheme, which is just absolutely gross. And people have hated it for a very long time. I don't know why it took Noctua so long, but finally, as I finish that sentence and pull this out of the box, but finally Noctua have come to the table and made all black models. Not just the fans, but also the grills and the heat pipes and everything as well, which isn't meant to be easy to actually like render this stuff black. So that's very, very impressive. But you've got to be very careful with screwdrivers. There we go. Yeah, you can sort of loosen that. Don't use one that doesn't really have a good way to grip it, because on a motherboard, if you're screwing something in and your hand slips and the screwdriver scrapes across the front of the motherboard, you're probably going to kill it. And it won't be under warranty because it's accidental damage. So just be extra careful with that kind of stuff. This is actually pretty good. You can get pretty decent leverage, and it doesn't take much just to loosen those screws. Cool, no worries. All right, I'm not going to bore you with installing this fan. I'll just cut to where I've done it. All right, we got this heatsink in place. If I sound a little bit out of breath, it's because getting this heatsink with the cold plate to go down evenly was quite a struggle. There's a screw either side of the cold plate here and on the other side here. Yeah, just getting like the threads to catch, pushing down one side and having the other side pop out. I was just wrestling with that for about 15 minutes, but I got it on. I can breathe a sigh of relief now. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Now it's just a case of popping these fans on. So we get two of these nice big chunky Noctua fans. These are awesome. If I've got this right, that air should come out the bottom there. Yep, that's the way. So we're going to have the airflow go inwards and inwards again if we just install the fan here and here. Now the ram's not too much in the way. No, I can almost get that down almost entirely flush. That's great. It's one of the reasons I got this really low profile RAM, so that wouldn't be an issue later on. So I've just popped on one fan. Let's just show you guys how to do the other one. It takes a bit of a stretch, but you want a nice tight fit to keep it in place. There we go. On one side, and hopefully you can see this one a bit better in my second camera there. Takes a bit of a stretch. Just got to slightly warp the metal. There we go. Beautiful. And beautiful. Okay, CPU, RAM, and the CPU cooler has now been installed. All right, that was the hard bit. So let's just get this graphics card on. Now this will be hanging loose for the time being, but this is just while I test it. Just chuck this bad boy in. This one's already lived inside a computer for quite a few years now, so I'm not too cut up if I break this part. Bit of wobble there, which is not ideal, but that's all right. It just needs to be like this for a little while longer while we test all this. Okay, next part, we're going to get this power supply, hook it up to that, and plug all of this into a screen and see if it works. Okie dokes, and the moment of truth. We've hooked up our power supply to everything on the board here. Sometimes when we first turn this on, it takes a few restarts to, I don't know, do its thing. Apparently it's quite common with AMD systems. Let's have a look, see what happens here. Okay, we're getting all kind of BIOS messages here on the motherboard. Let's see if it starts up or resets or something. 62, 98, 64. All right, what do we got here? Good, I guess, yes. It's detecting the right kind of chip. DRAM size 32 gigabytes, beautiful. I just want to make sure the CPU is running at a not ridiculous temperature. Yeah, we go, beautiful. All right, that is a pretty successful test. Let's have a quick look and see what's going on here. CPU is at 24 degrees Celsius and the motherboard is 26. That sounds good, so it looks like I've installed everything correctly. Whew. This is the bit that's the most annoying to fix if anything goes wrong. So, with all that in mind, let's clear off this table, get the case out, and start installing everything. Awesome! But now let's get to the fun bit. I have here my case. A Cooler Master H500 ARGB. Wasn't really that keen on getting an RGB case, but this was the one that sort of suited my needs the best. Apart from anything else, That Noctua fan is huge. So I need to make sure I got a case that I could actually physically fit it inside there, and this one fit the bill. There were a few other black cases I could have got which were sort of close, but I didn't want to chance it. I know I can always return something if it's not quite right, but at the moment post is so slow, I want to make sure I got one that I'd be absolutely sure would work for what I'm doing. Apart from anything else, yes, it's big, it's fat, it's nice and open, lots of airflow, two massive 200mm fans on the front, tempered glass, something that wasn't really a thing back when I built my last computer, so happy to finally get something like that. But yeah, overall going for sort of a black theme with this computer. I might do RGB stuff later on, but for the time being, just want to keep it simple. And also, I quite like the design of this. Decent amount of clearance on the bottom and a handle for picking it up as well, which I guess it's helpful if I have to move it around, which I seem to have to do more and more these days. All right, basic life hack. Get a bowl, put your screws in the bowl. And just pop all of these screws into a bowl so they're nice and safe. We got all the screws into the motherboard. So it's mounted. Now what I think I might do is install my NVMe drive. Behind this heatsink just there is an M.2 slot, and there's one more just tucked up under the graphics card there. So that's quite an easy one to get to if I ever need to. There is, however, a third one below the cooling fan for the CPU. So that's going to be difficult, but for the time being I can just use this one. So just on the back of this heatsink, there's some thermal padding. So once I remove the safety plastic on top of it, I can get a bit of thermal conductivity to my SSD and help it run a little bit cooler. And there we go. There is the itty bitty little M2 drive. I've never actually seen one of these in person. They are friggin' tiny. So this just installs diagonally there, like so, and you just use the screw to tighten it down. Pretty straightforward. Screw the right way, Nick. Usually helps. And then it's a case of getting all the wires down. I'm typically really bad at this, so this is going to be a fun exercise for me. Okay, we've got the back of the case off now, so I've just pulled all the cables through here. What I might do is actually, I might install my 2.5 SSD on the back of that, because I'll be using that to store games and like video editing stuff I'm working on. Stuff that's too big for the 1/2 terabyte system drive. You can actually install SSDs with double-sided tape. It's absolutely fine. There's no physical moving parts in these, so you don't have to be too precious with them, so long as they are largely secure. There you go. It's my 860 QVO, these sort of budget hard drives that Samsung make. They're fantastic for their price point. Really good to be able to get like a 1 terabyte SSD for I think 160, 150 bucks Australian. Really good. So that's going to go on the back of the motherboard just here. So if I'm doing this right, it should just go on like that. Love it. Love it. Super simple. That's so good. All right, that was super simple. Basically, you have these sort of small cylinder, pressurized, grippy screw things, technical term I know, that goes into the back of these 2.5 drives, and it just sort of, using the pressure of these rubber fittings, just presses into place. No screwdriver required. Basically toolless, so to speak. I approve. Speaking of which, we've actually got a drive cage in the front here, which I think I might remove. Let me show you that so you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, we do. This guy right here. Now, I actually don't want to install any mechanical drives in this whatsoever. I've got another room for an SSD at the back. And I've got 2 more NVMe slots, so I don't think I need the cage at all, actually. I'm just going to take it out. So because this has got a nice bit of clearance, as in underneath the case just there, I think I'm going to install this fan down. I mean, most people do that anyway. You can install fan up. There's nothing wrong with doing that if you don't think you're going to get much airflow underneath here. But my intention is to have this live on top of my desk more often than it is below my desk. And with that in mind, let's just make a closed system for the power supply here, as in it pulls air out of the bottom of the case and just expels it on the spot. It doesn't add any extra airflow to the system. It's not taking its air from the system. Looking good, looking good. We're on the home stretch now. We've just got to get rid of all the drive cage and everything. Yeah, we're pretty much at the point where I've just got to wire everything up. I don't think there's actually another component that has to go in here. The last box I have is for Windows 10, so yeah. Cool. And that is that. Yes, the thing is now completely built. It's now actually a couple of days after I did the build. And yeah, I'm just finishing up the edit on this video. The thing is buttery smooth when it comes to video editing. Quite lovely. I do really need to replace that video card though. The GTX 960 is woefully underpowered compared to the rest of this system, and it is a clear bottleneck, especially when it comes to things like gaming. It seems a bit silly to have all these other components and then sort of cheap out in the graphics card, because I want to play some nice, fun, modern games. I haven't really ever been able to do that in any serious way on computer before. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. If any of you have any questions about this build, it's not the kind of video I usually do on the channel, so if you'd like to see a bit more of this kind of stuff, let me know. Any questions, just jump down in the comment section below. Apart from that, you know, like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of standard stuff. I've got all my social media details and all that kind of thing down in the description, as well as the link for my channel's Patreon, so if you'd like to be part of that, just head down there. And in the meantime, I'll catch you all in the next video.